like, and make sure to engage in comments and share this video to your friends and story lovers, and click on the subscribe button on the screen to subscribe to Inquisco for more real and true stories like this. I barely remember the moment I first met Daniel. It was years ago, back when I was still blinded by the fresh glow of marriage, back when I still believed in the unshakable foundation of what my husband Mark and I had built. Daniel was Mark's best friend and lawyer, the man he trusted most in the world. I remember the way they laughed together, how easily they fell into sync, like brothers who had shared a lifetime of secrets. And for a long time, I was just the woman in the background, Mark's wife, nothing more. That changed somewhere along the way, though I couldn't pinpoint when. Maybe it was in the little moments, the way Daniel looked at me when Mark wasn't paying attention, or how his hand lingered just a second too long when he brushed past me at dinner parties. I knew the way he saw me, and worse, I knew that I saw him the same way. But I was a married woman, Mark's wife, and Daniel was his best friend, so I did what any faithful wife would do. I buried it. But Mark wasn't stupid. He had always been sharp, always aware of the undercurrents in a room. I should have known he'd catch on. He never confronted me about it, never let on that he suspected a thing. But I saw the change in him. The way his smiles didn't reach his eyes anymore. The way his touch became measured, calculated, as if he was testing whether I would pull away. He started watching me differently, watching us differently, when Daniel was around. And then, one day, he was just gone. A heart attack, they said. Sudden, unexpected. One moment he was standing in our kitchen, reaching for his coffee, and the next he was on the floor. I remember kneeling beside him, my hands shaking as I called his name, but he was already gone, just like that. The days that followed were a blur. People came and went, offering condolences, murmuring about how young he was, how tragic it all was. I nodded. I thanked them. I played my part. But inside something twisted in me. Guilt. Not because of what I had done, but because of what I hadn't done. Because I had been waiting for something to happen, waiting for something to justify the feelings I had buried. And now, Mark was gone. Daniel was there, of course, always by my side, making the arrangements, handling the legal mess that came with Mark's passing. He was the only one who knew how much Mark had suspected, the only one who could look me in the eye and understand the weight of it. The night before the funeral, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at nothing, my mind buzzing with thoughts I shouldn't have been thinking. And then there was a knock at the door. Daniel stood there, his tie loosened, his expression unreadable. "You should get some rest," he said, but he didn't step away. Neither did I. I don't know which of us moved first. Maybe it was both of us at the same time. All I knew was that suddenly he was closer, his breath warm against my skin, his presence pressing in on me in a way that made it impossible to think of anything else. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure he could hear it. This was wrong. It was all wrong. But I didn't pull away, and neither did he. For a moment, neither of us moved. The air between us was thick, weighted with something unspoken, but undeniable. I could hear my own breathing, shallow and uneven, and I knew Daniel could hear it too. He didn't touch me, not yet, but he was close enough that I could feel the warmth of him. Close enough that if I leaned forward just a fraction, I would cross a line that could never be uncrossed. I should have stepped back. I should have told him to go, to pretend this moment never happened. But I didn't. Instead, I just stood there, my body betraying me, my mind spinning with thoughts I didn't dare acknowledge. Daniel's eyes flickered over my face, searching, waiting for something, permission maybe, or the courage to stop himself. Then he exhaled, long and slow, and I felt his breath against my skin. "This isn't right," he murmured, but he didn't move away. I swallowed hard. I know. Neither of us moved. Seconds stretched into something unbearable, something dangerous. My pulse pounded in my ears, drowning out every rational thought. My husband was dead. His funeral was tomorrow. And yet, here I was, standing in the doorway of our bedroom, with his best friend and lawyer, with the one man he had trusted, more than anyone in the world. Daniel's jaw tightened. He looked away for a second, like he was trying to get himself under control. But when his eyes met mine again, I knew it was already too late. His fingers brushed against my wrist, light, barely there, but it sent a jolt through me, like the spark of a match against dry wood. "You need to rest," he said again, but it was softer this time, his voice rough around the edges. I almost laughed. Rest? How could I possibly rest when my entire body was buzzing with something I didn't have a name for? "Stay," I whispered. It was a mistake. The second the word left my lips, I saw it in his face. The shift, the loss of restraint. His hand tightened ever so slightly around my wrist, not enough to hold me there, but enough that I knew if I pulled away, he would let me go. I didn't pull away. Daniel stepped forward, closing the space between us inch by inch. His fingers skimmed up my arm, slow, deliberate, as if he was memorizing the feel of me. I shivered, but not from the cold. "You don't know what you're asking for," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. But I did. I knew exactly what I was asking for. For weeks, maybe even months, I had been teetering on the edge of something I couldn't admit to myself. I had played the role of the grieving wife, the loyal partner, even when I knew Mark had suspected. And now, here I was, on the precipice of proving him right. Daniel's hands were on my arms now, sliding up to my shoulders, his touch heavier, more certain. I could feel the tension in him, the war waging inside his head. This was wrong. This was unforgivable. And yet, neither of us could seem to stop. "I shouldn't be here," he muttered, his forehead resting against mine. I closed my eyes, swallowing down the guilt that threatened to claw its way up my throat. "Then leave." He didn't move. We were so close now that I could feel every breath he took, the rise and fall of his chest, the way his fingers trembled slightly as they curled around the back of my neck. My body responded on instinct, leaning into him, craving something I couldn't define. "Tell me to go," Daniel whispered, his lips just inches from mine. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Silence. Thick, deafening silence. Then, a sharp knock at the front door. I jolted back like I had been burned, my heart slamming against my ribs. Daniel's hands dropped away instantly, and he took a step back, his breathing uneven. We stared at each other, both of us caught in the haze of whatever had just almost happened. The knock came again, harder this time. Reality crashed back into me like a tidal wave. My husband was dead. His funeral was in the morning, and someone was at the door, demanding my attention. Daniel ran a hand over his face, exhaling harshly. "I should go." I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. He hesitated just for a second, as if he was waiting for me to stop him. But I didn't. I couldn't. Without another word, he turned and walked away. I stood there for a long time after the door closed behind him, my body still thrumming with the ghost of his touch. The funeral was tomorrow, and I had almost ruined everything. The funeral felt surreal, a blur of black clothing, muffled voices, and the overwhelming weight of loss pressing against my chest. People whispered condolences, some with genuine grief, others with rehearsed sympathy. I barely heard them. My mind was elsewhere, on the night before, on the moment I had almost crossed a line I could never uncross. Daniel stood near the casket, his expression unreadable. He had barely looked at me since this morning, and I knew why. What had almost happened between us still lingered in the air like a ghost, refusing to be ignored. I tried to focus, tried to mourn the man who had been my husband, the man I had loved once, even if I hadn't always been faithful in my heart. But my thoughts kept circling back to Daniel, to his touch, to how easy it would have been to let everything unravel. And then, as the priest spoke his final words, I felt it, a presence, a weight heavier than grief settling in my chest, a feeling I couldn't shake. Someone was watching me. I turned my head slightly, scanning the crowd, and that's when I saw him, David, Mark's younger brother. He stood near the back, half hidden by the gathered mourners, his eyes locked on me. A chill ran down my spine. David had always been different from Mark, quieter, more observant, and right now his gaze held something I couldn't quite decipher. Suspicion? Accusation? I swallowed hard, forcing myself to look away. Maybe I was just imagining it. Maybe it was the guilt twisting in my gut, making me see things that weren't there. But the unease didn't fade. After the service, people trickled out, leaving me alone with Daniel. He stood by the grave, his hands in his pockets, his expression tight. I hesitated before stepping closer. "Daniel," I said softly. He tensed, but didn't look at me. "We shouldn't talk here." Something about the way he said it sent another shiver down my spine. "Then come by later." He hesitated, then gave a slight nod before walking away. That night, the house felt too big, too empty. Every room carried an echo of Mark, a reminder of the man who had once lived here, the man who had suspected me, the man who had died knowing something I hadn't wanted him to know. A knock at the door. I opened it without thinking, expecting Daniel, but it wasn't him. It was David. I froze, gripping the doorframe. "What are you doing here?" His lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. "We need to talk." I didn't move. Every instinct told me to shut the door, to send him away, but the look in his eyes rooted me in place. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, moving with the kind of confidence that sent my nerves on edge. "I know." The words sent a bolt of ice through me. "Know what?" David turned to face me fully, his expression eerily calm. "That you were having an affair." The room spun for a second. I forced myself to breathe, to keep my voice steady. "You don't know what you're talking about." He laughed, shaking his head. "Come on, do you really think Mark didn't find out? He suspected you for months." My stomach twisted painfully. "That's not true." David's eyes darkened. "Oh, but it is. He came to me, you know. Told me he thought something was going on between you and Daniel. He didn't confront you because he wanted proof first." My knees nearly buckled. Mark had known. He had known, and he had died with that knowledge. David stepped closer, lowering his voice. "The night before he died, he called me." My breath caught. He told me he had finally found proof. A cold sweat broke out along my skin. "That's not possible," I whispered. David tilted his head, watching me like a predator watching its prey. He was going to divorce you, you know. He had already spoken to his lawyer. Daniel. The room suddenly felt suffocating. David leaned in slightly. And then, just hours later, he was dead. Something inside me cracked. Are you saying that it's a hell of a coincidence? David smirked. Yeah, I am. I shook my head. Mark had a heart attack. Did he? My pulse pounded so loudly I could barely hear my own thoughts. David watched me carefully, then took a step back. You should be very careful, you know. People are starting to ask questions. I swallowed hard. What do you want from me? For the first time, his expression softened. Just a little. Right now? Nothing. But I'm watching you. Then he turned and walked out, leaving the door wide open behind him. I stood there, my entire body shaking. Mark had known. He had been gathering proof. He had planned to leave me. And then suddenly he was dead. My stomach turned violently. Had it really been a heart attack? Or had someone made sure he never got the chance to expose the truth? A sharp knock at the door made me jolt. I spun around. Daniel stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. Are you okay? He asked. I opened my mouth to answer, but nothing came out. Because for the first time, a new thought took root in my mind. Had Daniel known? Had he helped Mark disappear? Or worse, had he done it himself? Did Mark really die of natural causes, or was there something more sinister at play? And if so, did Daniel have a hand in it? Click on the subscribe button on the screen to subscribe to Inquisco for more real and true stories like this.